Well, good afternoon and welcome to Tuesday, May 2nd's Port Commission meeting. I opened the meeting at 1:30 and we right away recessed to an executive session to discuss a potential real estate transaction. We will now close that executive session and reconvene the public meeting. And the first item on the agenda is roll call. Diane, if you could, please.
Commissioners, if you'd please answer when I call out your name. Commissioner Briscoe?
Here.
Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Robbins?
Here.
Let the record show all three commissioners are present.
At this time, I'd like to also point out our public meetings that are coming up. The Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, or the BIAC, is scheduled for Thursday, May 11th at 5:30 at the ARF building. It's open to the public. All these meetings are. The Technical Airport Advisory Committee, or the TAC, is May 11th, same day at 9:30 a.m. at the same place at the ARF building. And the Marine Advisory Committee is Tuesday, May 9th. It's right here in this location, but it usually starts at later in the evening. This one is going to start at 3:45. So anyone interested in attending the MAC meeting, it's at 3:45 on May 9th. Let's see.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, we've been corrected that it'll start at 4:15.
4:15.
4:15, okay, the MAC meeting's at 4:15.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item of order is the public comment period, and I would like to ask, is there anyone in here who is here to make a public comment on something other than the homeless shelter? You can go first if you so desire. Is there anyone here who wants to do that? Super. So for the brevity of being able to get through all of these folks in a timely manner, I'll call the first name to come to the podium. All these are recorded, so you need to talk from the podium. And the first person can come up, and then anyone after them, just stand kind of in the dugout to step up right away, rather than me have to call your name. So we have one ready. You don't have to crawl through the audience. Just line up as you see an opening there. The first, and then announce your name as well. The first person is David Ferris. Am I saying that correctly? Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to start by saying that everyone has their own opinion concerning addiction, whatever that addiction may be. I would encourage people to keep an open mind when it comes to people experiencing homelessness, whether due to addiction or circumstances beyond their control. The stigma that everyone chooses to abuse alcohol or drugs is, in my opinion, a misconception, as well as an uneducated opinion as well. People experiencing homelessness, mental illness, or financial adversity may have, in the beginning, chose to abuse drugs, alcohol, or any addiction for that matter. They may have thought, I can control it, I'm not as bad as so-and-so. But unfortunately and inevitably, the drug or alcohol or whatever the addiction may be ends up controlling them. There are some who have managed to control their addiction, but that doesn't mean life is any easier. If anything, it becomes much harder. A person experiencing homelessness has to fight every waking moment of every day to stay clean or sober. With time and support, the fight becomes less of a struggle, provided there are resources in place that can help the person with whatever their issues may be. One of those resources, most important that I believe, is housing. Battling a drug or alcohol or mental illness is in no way an easy battle, not only for the person suffering, but for loved ones as well as a community. I know from firsthand experience that if you give a person a chance, such as shelter, you are showing them that they just don't exist, that they are human beings worth helping. A person experiencing homelessness for whatever reason is somebody's brother, sister, mother, father, child, grandfather, or mother. I wear this walking boot because I was homeless for a long time and lost all my toes and half my foot due to frostbite. I used to go to bed and pray that I wouldn't wake up in the morning. If I had been given the opportunity and support in the beginning stages of my addiction, I could have saved all of my toes and half my foot. Not everyone will make it, even with the help of a shelter, but I can tell you this. I've been living at the Lighthouse Mission for close to 4 months now. Today makes 105 days clean and sober for me. That is largely due to not only the overwhelming amount of support I get from the community, but because of having a place to go that offers counseling, programs, food, shower, and a bed to sleep in every night. A place that does not discriminate against anyone experiencing homelessness for whatever reason. As long as the low barrier shelter has a criteria focusing on helping with the many issues surrounding how a person experiencing homelessness for whatever reason got to that point in their life, especially affordable health programs, mental health programs, so that the issues can be pre-diagnosed before leading to homelessness. With that said, I strongly urge you to accept the offer from the city in exchange for giving up your right to purchase the land in question. It can and will save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'd like to make one exception on the next speaker. Could Sheriff Bill Elfo, you signed up, and I think you've got somewhere to go. You're welcome to come first so you can get out there and protect us.
Catching the bad guys. Good afternoon. My name is Bill Elfo. As Sheriff of Whatcom County, I want to encourage you to continue collaborating with the city and the Lighthouse Mission in pursuit of their joint goal of increasing shelter services and capacity. Our community has enormous and growing issues with unsheltered persons. While not all unsheltered persons struggle with mental illness or addictions, many do. The mission has a 96-year history of excellence in providing meaningful and effective services that help rebuild lives. People living in the streets and parks are vulnerable to being victimized by crime. Unsheltered women have been raped, and one was even murdered in Maritime Heritage Park. Our community has not yet addressed the issue of an overcrowded and unsafe jail facility that lacks resources to adequately evaluate, treat, and house those with behavioral health issues. Law enforcement should have effective alternatives to jailing those people whose behaviors could be better and more humanely addressed through community-based services rather than through the criminal justice system. The Lighthouse Mission has the expertise to help divert many from the treadmill of criminal justice to recovery. What they need is the space to do so. I have not been party to any of the discussions, nor am I fully privy to the process or considerations involved in evaluating the proposed or other viable sites. However, it is abundantly clear that to maximize effectiveness, it is important that the proposed additional capacity be located somewhere in close proximity to the mission's primary base of operation and its existing services, as well as to those of the partner agencies they work so closely with on an everyday basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. If there's anyone else that signed up and came in real early that has to leave, you can go, and if not, next.
I do have to leave. I'm part of the Working Waterfront, and I also want to make clear that I am also a concerned citizen as far as the homeless are concerned. My business has given employment to homeless. We have fed homeless people who have wandered over to us when we were feeding our guests. We fed them.
Roger,
my name is Roger
you?
Van Dyken. I am the owner of San Juan Sailing and San Juan Yachting, and you are my sole landlord for the last 35 years. So we have supported the Lighthouse Mission financially for decades. We bring food to them during the season, excess food that we ask our guests to donate that they don't use on the boats. We bring it to them. I am very sensitive to the needs here, and I want to applaud both the commission and the city and members of the community for their responsible, caring, and from all appearances to me, even-handed, considered approach to this issue. It is a difficult one. It's a matter of setting priorities. And I understand and appreciate the arguments in favor of having a facility close to the lighthouse mission. I also have watched over the last 35 years as waterfront land for the working waterfront has disappeared, as we have been unable to compete with doctors, lawyers, engineers' offices, and I've watched my colleagues either go under or flee the waterfront to find better rates elsewhere. And I just want to say, in all my 35 years, I have never been so encouraged as a member of that working waterfront as I am standing here right now because of the attitude of the three commissioners that we have towards protecting the working waterfront. And we cannot have a working waterfront unless there is land available for those industries that need the water to operate. There are other places that can be considered, that need to be considered for a homeless shelter. And I know the siting is difficult. I've been in elected office. I know the pressures. It's difficult. And yet this is a vital, scarce, irreplaceable resource at this location. And the recent actions that you have taken regarding rental rates to make it more affordable for waterfront businesses to be down here is positive. And although I have to leave from my working waterfront appointment doing my job, I have faith that you will continue in that difficult decision, but that commitment to protect the working waterfront and the industries that have to be here in order to survive and serve the rest of us. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you for your comments, Roger. Okay, next.
I'm Ray Poorman. I'm just a concerned citizen and a local business owner. I work with the port by providing fiber optic internet access through this area, this corridor, and look forward to attracting a lot more tech businesses to the area and to the new development. My concerns are twofold. I'm a past commodore of the Bellingham Yacht Club. I'm a licensed captain. I'm involved in waterfront activities as well as in the business side of the activity on both sides of this. I'm concerned that with the location of this, not just displacing businesses, but also importing more homeless people. And I concur with everyone here who's spoken about the homeless and drug addiction. And I've encountered it. I've had friends I've lost from it. So I am completely understanding of this issue. I would love to see more work with some people to discuss exactly how to help the homeless, in addition to just supplying a cot for a night. I think that that's what we need to focus on, and having this thing in the center of the harbor, splitting the two harbors, when we're on a waiting list for a new slip in the new marina, and suddenly you can't walk all the way around because there's just too many people to get through, I think is a problem. I eat jalapenos all the time, and the amount of problems and crime and unattended to issues in that park are staggering. And we need to find a better way to police the homeless problem as well as relocate them or find better places for them to be. It's just getting tighter and tighter down here by the Lighthouse Mission. And it's going to come to a head at some point. I just hope that this isn't it. And I would hate to give up our waterfront for a 75-year lease. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ray.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Eldridge. I'm a resident of the Leonard Streets neighborhood. I have 3 children and a wife there, and I'm also the pastor of Leonard Streets Covenant Church. It's been in the neighborhood for over 8 years now, serving many of you. So good to be here. Can I just say I just love this community. I've so appreciated what I've heard so far, just the mutual respect that this is a complicated issue. So thank you for being civil to one another. I am speaking in advocacy of the mission, and one of the things I want to pitch is the idea of looking at this from a higher level and looking at it from the idea of greater good. Greater good will require short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, and I just have 3 simple points I wanted to make. The first one is economic, and you may not think a pastor would talk about economics very much, but it's important. It's important to God. It's important to people. And plenty can be said, I think, and maybe will be said about how the ministry of the mission actually takes economic pressure off of the city and other services. They can simply do things more cheaply than sending people to the jails and hospitals. But there's other factors here as well. This proposed facility would take people out of the storefronts of businesses downtown, Jalapenos, as was just mentioned, and put them in a safe, enclosed area where they can receive services not out into the public eye, but in a courtyarded area off of the streets. And I think it would actually encourage businesses downtown. And it's also good for the general economy. You know, when a person has a life that's transformed, and I've seen this happen, people in my church that have come through the mission, graduated the program, then go to BTC or other schools, get an education, get a trade, and now they are tax-paying citizens. And it takes people from being receivers to being contributors. And that's something that this low barrier shelter can help facilitate. Is that really 3 minutes? Wow. I propose that you guys consider this low barrier shelter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Kingsley. I'm a mortgage tenant. And in looking at this proposal, with all of the work that this port and the city have done together to arrive at the point where a redevelopment plan for the waterfront is now fully envisioned, where are we going? What are we going to say about this proposal, except that it is a misplaced improvement? When one thinks of all of the work that is going into the development of the waterfront, with the attraction of new businesses, we hope, to the waterfront area, and in the long term, perhaps the development as many as 1,200 residences for families to live and work within the community, having the attraction of this homeless facility, which will be a magnet for homeless people, not only in this community, but from others, to come here for the free services proposed by the city. Mayor Linville spoke at the Bellingham Yacht Club to a packed house last week. I was there too. Her description and her vision for this comes down to some simple economics that this gentleman left out. The economics might be that the city owns the land, and it's a lot cheaper to locate it there than elsewhere. The fact that, as she put it, we're only displacing 5 businesses is not that great an impact on the city. But it is for the 5 businesses concerned. It's also a hell of an impact on where this port wants to go to help improve the workplace that will be the vision for the future development of this area. I encourage you strongly to exercise your ability to purchase the property and prevent the facility from being developed here. If it's needed, and well it is, it should be placed in an area away from where residential and future commercial development are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Greg Winter. I'm Executive Director of Opportunity Council, and I want to briefly describe our role in the community's response to homelessness and tell you why the shelter proposal is an important and immediate need. In coordination with other nonprofits, we operate a number of homeless housing and financial stability programs that are related to housing stability. We also operate the Whatcom Homeless Service Center and the Homeless Street Outreach Team. Those 2 programs are designed to give us real-time information on who is homeless, their situation, and what opportunities there are to match them with housing that exists in more than 20 programs, both within Opportunity Council and at external agencies that we partner with. We also coordinate the annual homeless census each January along with the county health department. All of these coordinating outreach and information management activities give us a comprehensive picture of the state of homelessness and the trends that affect our efforts to reduce it. I don't have time to cite all the statistics in 3 minutes, but I'm happy to provide detailed numbers later if that's helpful. I'm here to tell you tonight that the #1 reason we and most other metro areas have a homelessness problem is the lack of affordable rental housing, period. That's the driver. Unemployment, addictive and mental illness, and domestic violence are parts of some people's stories. However, it's the lack of housing they can afford that lies at the heart of this problem. And the reason we've suddenly seen a spike in the number of people who are homeless is because in the aftermath of the Great Recession, the rate at which we fell further behind in creating affordable housing units increased dramatically. And this led to a rapid price escalation in the rental market, and that exacerbated the problem further. This is the story throughout the West Coast. It's happening in many, many places, certainly throughout Washington State, and the State Department of Commerce has documented this well. So while our communities gear up to increase production of affordable rental units, we're left with a dilemma of what to do about the public health emergency that's evident with so many people living on our streets and in our parks. On the housing production side, we're fortunate in Bellingham to have the Home Fund, a voter-passed initiative that's accelerated the rate of production of new affordable and special needs rental housing. Our problem on the public health side of the equation is that our community has no more emergency shelter capacity. Our homeless outreach team, police officers, and EMS paramedics have nowhere to offer people to go as an alternative to being on the street or in our parks. There is literally no other acceptable place to go. So many of the people I'm talking about are extremely vulnerable to the risks of living unsheltered. Many have poorly managed chronic disease, which increase their chance of mortality without proper care or shelter. Our first homeless persons memorial was catalyzed 2 years ago when a gentleman our outreach team had been working with was found frozen to death under somebody's porch. Sadly, we've had reason to continue holding these memorials. I'm almost finished. My message and plea to you is simple and direct. We are facing a public health emergency wherein people are literally dying on our streets. There's just nowhere for them to get immediate shelter, and access to services. I'm asking the people who are making this decision to make a sacrifice. The port, the affected businesses, the city, and Lighthouse Mission. I don't presume that this disruption is going to be easy for anyone involved. But I have seen members of this community rally to causes that make me proud of where I live. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. If there are any of you that didn't sign up, I will give you a chance to speak at the end, so keep that in mind if you had a question about that. Go ahead.
Commissioners, thanks very much. I'm Liz Jennings from the Sunnyland neighborhood, and I appreciate that you've got your mission statement up here. It's a good reminder to everyone. I remember during one election cycle when a commissioner, an incumbent, wondered why did we invite him to our Human Services candidate forum? The port doesn't have anything to do with poverty, he said. He was not reelected. And I really appreciate that the port understands that you are a partner in this community in the totality of economic development, not just on the waterfront. That transportation and jobs and economic vitality go beyond just this one neighborhood. And I would agree with many of what the advocates have said here today. Being a Sunnylander, I live where I live because of proximity to transit and services. We need a shelter downtown or near the waterfront because that's where people are. You can start busing them to an old Costco building or set up something someplace else. People will continue to be here because of proximity to services and transit. So my question to you is, how is visible street homelessness and invisible homelessness of our families who are sleeping in cars and other places, how is that better for the economy of the port and the port renters than a shelter where people can be safely housed? And to the point, it's a fallacy. I work in homeless housing issues in Skagit County as well. It's a fallacy that people are coming here for services. Most of the people who are experiencing homelessness in Whatcom County are our neighbors. It's point in time count year to year, it averages between 50 and 75% of homeless folks are our neighbors. Their last permanent address was in Whatcom County. The others came here for the same reasons that many of us here today came here, which was quality of life, promise of a job, proximity to family. And so saying no to this is simply saying yes to street homelessness in downtown and on the waterfront.
Thank you, Liz.
My name is Dean White. I live on Toledo Street in Port District Number 1. And I'm a retired healthcare administrator. After my retirement, I had the opportunity to work briefly with the Interfaith Council as they operated for a couple of winters that I was involved, their cold weather shelter. So I had an opportunity to really see folks firsthand and understand the challenges that they face. As others have said, the entire community needs to do its part. And so I'm here speaking on behalf of the mayor's request that you do relinquish your option and step up to allow that facility to be developed at that location. I know there's been extensive work done to try to locate or identify other sites, all of which have fallen through for a variety of reasons. I'm also familiar in my career with the fact that in most situations where vulnerable people who have needs, there are proposals for them for facilities to be developed to meet their needs. There's always resistance, regardless of the community, whether it's a commercial district or residential district. And so I think it's simply necessary that the port step up at this point and partner with the city to allow that facility to be converted to that use. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
My name is Cheryl Russell, and I'm a downtown homeowner and a small business owner. I am here today to speak in favor of the low barrier shelter and the proposed location on Roeder Avenue. The lack of a 24-hour easy access shelter is one of our community's most critical challenges, and it affects the entire city, but in particular, it affects our downtown corridor where I live. Many of the people without shelter are my neighbors, and I see them every day. And they need a place that they can go for not only a bed to sleep, but also a place to shower, a place to store their belongings, a place to have their pets, to live with their partner, and have access to services that they need to hopefully get and stay healthy so that they can move into permanent homes. This shelter would give them a chance for a better life, and it will ease the pressure on downtown businesses and residents, as well as other neighborhoods. In an ideal world, shelters would be accessible to all people who are seeking an alternative to sleeping on the street. But unfortunately, there are many basic and complex reasons why people seeking shelter remain on the streets. Creating a 24-hour service center would help reduce the stresses on our law enforcement officials and officers and alleviate them from being makeshift caseworkers rather than being free to address the crime that's on our streets. I'm very aware of all the work and time that Mayor Linville and Rick Sepler, our Director of Planning and Community Development, and other city staff have spent in looking for a location for this shelter. I know that they haven't found one, and I'm very appreciative and I'm very impressed with the efforts that they've put to finding a place. And I think that we need to step up as a community and support the location that they found. I've been to many meetings, involved in long conversations over the last year, and like many of you, I know this group has worked tirelessly to find a location that works. In addition, the city has come up with $300,000 in capital contributions and other investments in exchange for the port to relinquish their right to purchase this property on Roeder Avenue and to share in making this shelter finally happen. As a citizen and as a taxpayer and a fellow caring human being, I'm respectfully asking the Port Commission to show the community at large how you also care about the overall health and economic vitality, as well as the vitality and safety of our downtown, by accepting the city's offer and to relinquish your first right to purchase this property. I feel that this is your opportunity to help Bellingham take the next step to reduce the number of people living on the streets. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the commissioners for their service. My name is Gary Hall, and my wife and I have been Bellingham residents for 26 years. We are also residents of the Ledyard Streets neighborhood. I'm here to say that we fully support the purchase of the Roeder Avenue property by the port. Our beautiful waterfront is quite unique on the entire West Coast. That is, having a moderate climate, deep water channels, and a relatively undeveloped waterfront. I believe it is the mandate of the port and of the city to take a long view toward the beauty and prosperity of our waterfront and not surrender this prime property to a short-sighted and most likely unviable idea of the large homeless shelter right in the middle of this waterfront potential. I imagine for a moment a busy, thriving, developed waterfront as a focal point of our city, welcoming residents, tourists, and businesses. A place to stroll with friends and family, shopping and eating at the cafes and pubs. Now imagine again, in the middle of all this, hundreds of homeless people wandering back and forth to the Lighthouse Mission, creating untold traffic congestion at the 3 railroad crossings. Homelessness is indeed a problem, a big problem, worthy of our attention and effort. Let's not make it an even bigger problem by dedicating this prime waterfront space to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
My name is Arlene Feld. I live in the Ledyard Streets, so I am directly affected by this project. I'm retired now, but I just spent 10 years working with this population in the respite program. So the homeless, the addicted, and the mentally ill are a group of people I know intimately. And they've expressed their needs to me directly because I have asked them. And the one thing that's been entirely missing all the years that they have been being sheltered at times is any kind of serious day program. They're shuffled out very early in the morning with all their belongings. So this program is offering the things that have been needed for years, and it's desperately needed, desperately needed. If you delay by asking for another location, then that's another year or a year and a half that will be tacked on to this process. We do not need that. When I look at the solving of this problem, I don't look at it strictly from the point of view of the homeless at all. What I care about is our city. I care that our city thrives, every bit of it. And I am extremely concerned about the problems and the complaints in the parks and on the trails. And if you have a day program, much of that is going to be addressed because people will have a place to be, to work on the things that they need to work on. The economic effect of people sleeping, peeing, wandering the streets is severe. Everybody who knows the downtown knows what's happened. We've lost a lot of businesses. And if you talk to your friends and neighbors, they say, I don't like to go down there, right? So I'm asking you to, for the sake of the city, for the sake of all of us, for the economic reasons, to agree to the offer that the city has made you. Please take that. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Harden. I'm with the Working Waterfront Coalition. I'm the president of that organization. We have come before the port today in hopes that we can encourage you to vote on this and move forward in exercising your right to purchase the property. And we want to make clear as a Working Waterfront Coalition and a group that supports the marine trades that we have spent the last 2 to 3 months very vested in this project, the issue at hand is so complicated that it is overwhelming, I think, at times. I've spoken with the city, Kelly Linville, Hans with the Lighthouse Mission. I've spoken with you as commissioners of our port, and it is a situation and an issue that requires massive involvement from our entire community. And we want to encourage you guys as our port commissioners to continue to pursue excellent involvement with the city, no matter what the outcome of this project is. I think we've seen very good communication from all aspects and all people that we've dealt with in this. And it's been something that we as a community and as the Working Waterfront Coalition have learned a lot about as we work to see how we integrate into our community and work to develop economic development for the waterfront and grow as an organization as well and work with the port and the city. As well, we want to really reinforce the unique properties of our property there at 801. We look at it as 1001 C Street, and the very unique skill set that can be performed from that property that's not available in other locations. And it is a very, very finite economic resource, the waterfront properties that we have where we can haul boats, we can do work, we can draw in economic growth from outside of our community. And I think we really want to impress upon you how valuable that property is, how irreplaceable it is, and how rare it is to have a community that has some of these assets. I've worked all over the waterfront, all over the world, up and down the West Coast, and we have a very unique, I think, economic resource here that's limited, and we should not easily shift that into other trades and business ventures. And I think we have as a community as well, the port and the Working Waterfront Coalition, we have examined other properties, and I think very firmly that there are other options that we can work with the city to develop and I think pursue actively. So we appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Good afternoon. My name's Matt Mullett. I'm the owner of All American Marine. I've been a port tenant down in Fairhaven for the last 14 years. And just recently are in the process of moving into the new facility just on Hilton Avenue. I firmly believe in what Lighthouse Mission is doing. I've known Han Erschinger since he was about 2 or 3 years old. I know some of the other staff at the Lighthouse Mission personally. I've personally contributed to the organization as well as the corporate giving and going in that direction too. And I really, it's a torn issue, I'm sure, like everybody else is experiencing. You know, this is a very real need, but where is the right spot? And I would have to agree with Matt Harden that that location, I don't believe, is the best. I'm not at all saying, you know, not in my backyard, because the current Lighthouse Mission is closer to us than the down on C Street, but I believe that it needs to be in the proximity of the current Lighthouse Mission complex. But I'm very concerned that it would not, it would take away some very valuable real estate for other marine operators. Again, I believe it needs to be in the proximity to the current Lighthouse Mission, and I just appeal for everyone just to continue to look for alternatives that would meet this very, very important need. Can't say again how impressed I am with Lighthouse Mission. I think that we have a tremendous asset here in our community because of the organization, and I don't think it could be run any better. So thanks for hearing me.
Thank you, Matt.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Estes from the Cardata neighborhood of Bellingham. I'm urging the Commission to accept the city's offer in support of the homeless shelter on Roeder Avenue. I urge your acceptance of this offer, especially now that the city has offered the port over $300,000 in capital contributions and other investments in exchange for relinquishing the right to purchase. After an exhaustive year-long search of public and private property, the City of Bellingham identified the city-owned property on Roeder to be the only feasible site to build a shelter. Certainly there is no perfect site for a homeless shelter, but how long do we have to wait to help the unsheltered in our community? Upwards of 25% of the homeless population in the United States lives with some form of severe mental illness, in comparison to only 6% of the population that in the United States lives with a severe mental illness. I see no reason why these statistics should be different for Bellingham. How we treat those most vulnerable in our society says a lot about our values. I certainly support Bellingham's need for a working waterfront, and there are some representatives from that group that are concerned that such a shelter does not belong near the waterfront. The city's $300,000 investment should help address displacement and in other ways help strengthen the working waterfront in that part of town. I also support the shelter at that location because public safety would improve in this industrial area of Bellingham, as 200 men and women who would otherwise be on the street each night would have a warm bed to sleep in and access to needed services. Merchants in this area now complain about overnight sleeping in doorways and sidewalks, trash, and other factors related to homelessness, factors which should diminish with a 24/7 shelter at this location. Finally, the time to act is now. How long do we have to wait to increase homeless services in Bellingham? The city has been searching for a location for this type of facility for over a year and has not found another suitable location within city limits. For these reasons, please vote to accept the city's offer and proceed with building this needed facility to address homelessness in Bellingham. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Bostrom. I've been preaching the gospel in this community for, well, about 40 years. I left a few times to go to school and have 3 graduate degrees. During my 40 years, I spent 2 years as the official chaplain of the Lighthouse Mission back in the old days. By the way, I'm old school. And missions in the history of the United States were designed to preach the gospel, meaning repent and receive Jesus Christ and change. Have you ever wondered why there's so many homeless people that don't go to these facilities? During my 2 years at the mission, I learned the great lesson, which was this. The reason many people are homeless, regardless of what the so-called experts are saying, is because they want to be. They like being independent and they don't want anybody telling them what to do. So this assumption that if you just get some beds, if you just get some facilities, that all these people are going to pour out of the park and off the streets and stop urinating and defecating in the town, and they're going to go right into this facility. Guess what? It's not going to happen. And I predict this. You'll probably, as a city, do some kind of a shelter. By the way, I'm against this shelter being mentioned, and I'm against the shelter anywhere else as well. How about just use what you have right now and prove that you can get a life changed? By the way, all the homeless people, I've known many homeless people over those 40 years, and most of the ones that I knew came from a different state. And the only way they got delivered is to leave this enabling community. This whole Northwest area, Portland, Seattle, is enabling the homeless because they got the climate to go with it, so you can live outdoors all year round. So here's what's going to happen when you build your shelter. They will come. Some will go in the shelter, but most will find out there's rules, and they're going to go right out where they go. What we need in Bellingham is to let the police enforce the law. I talked to one policeman just yesterday that said he had to give a 7-day notice to get a guy to get a tent off a sidewalk. A 7-day notice. So I believe we don't know how to solve the homeless problem because we don't want to deal with the reality that people need to change. And I believe missions need to change and churches need to change because we're not preaching the gospel anymore. So in the old days, they said, repent or you'll perish. And they said, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't, as my dad taught me, if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you don't like the rules, pack your bags. By the way, none of us did. That's what we need in this community. We need to go back to the things that worked before we had this enabling nanny state, socialism, that's growing and growing and growing, and they're coming like rats off a sinking ship. And I'm going to warn you. I'm going to warn you one more time. If you put this shelter in, you're going to pay the price, and you're going to see more homeless here than you've ever seen before.
Eric,
God bless you, and God bless America.
Interrupt you, but we do have a 3-minute rule, since you're talking about rules.
Well, it just so happens, my friend, that I'm finished.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Alice Clark, and I'm a resident of Bellingham. I've been a resident since 1980, and I've spent a lot of time downtown. I was the director of the Pickford Film Center for 10 years, and I'm now the director of the Downtown Bellingham Partnership, although I'm speaking for myself right now. I care deeply about downtown, and what's happening now is really concerning to me. And I know it's really complex. It's more than homelessness. It's drug use. It's criminal activities. And sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel like it's just, you start talking about it and you're like, how are we ever going to deal with this? And we don't know all of the answers for the challenges that we face, but I think we do know that the longer we take to deal with this, the harder it's going to be to revitalize downtown, the more expensive it's going to be to revitalize downtown. So I'm here with a message of urgency. I'm in support of this shelter being built because the health of the downtown is really a reflection of the overall health of the community. And if our downtown can be safe and welcoming and it encourages more business to open, it retains existing businesses, it ensures a larger customer base and more commerce overall. And that is a positive cycle of economic development. Businesses that are considering moving here, relocating here to downtown proper or the waterfront, look at our downtown and assess whether it feels healthy for the employees that they'll be bringing here and their community and their own families. So we need this type of facility now. I wish it could happen this year, and it makes me really nervous that it's going to take even 2 years because that's a long time to wait. A lot of people don't, like they have been saying, they don't have a place to go during the day or during the night, and this is really impacting all of our downtown businesses. You can feel the pressure if you go up there. We know that the shelter also needs to be downtown, close to downtown because of the resources, and since this is the case, that's what we have to deal with. The mission and the city have stepped up to make this shelter happen. And truthfully, I don't see another entity other than the mission that's willing to take this on. And so because that's the case, I think we really need to understand what they need to make this happen and help them as much as we can right now instead of deter them. We need this shelter now. We know this population is only going to increase in the future. We're not Seattle yet. We're not San Francisco yet. This is the time to get a handle on it. So I urge you to take the action to make this possible and move forward on voting to use it. Otherwise, it could be 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road when we actually get a handle on it. And I don't want us to look back then and go, why didn't we do that? So thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, commissioners, mayor, public. George Dyson, 435 West Holly. I've spoken on this issue before. I've been tracking it since the beginning. I'll try and be brief. I never thought I would be sandwiched between Alice and Jeff McClure, nor that I would disagree with Alice, but I will disagree with Alice and say that there are absolutely viable actions we could take to deal with this problem now, not 2 years from now. We need to look at that. 2 years out, it's not 3 or 4 or 5. We could be doing something right away. I've been exposed to all the alternatives, and I disagree that this is the only viable alternative. I was going to read you the preamble to the interlocal agreement by which this property is in port control. I'm not going to read that, but I urge you to read those 3 paragraphs to explain why this property was called out as working waterfront trades. I'm speaking purely as myself, not for the Working Waterfront Coalition. I think we need a larger site and we need a site that is sooner, and those possibilities exist, and I urge you to put the pressure on to look at those alternatives because they have not been adequately addressed. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff McClure. I always hate to follow George Dyson on anything, actually. So I am a business owner I'm the owner of RMC Architects. I've been in the downtown as a business owner for 30 years. The most recently 15 years at the corner of Railroad and Holly. Myself and Jeff Kochman were part of the development team that developed what was affectionately called the Pit at that time, the Marketplace building. So it's safe to say that I'm kind of at ground zero for the homeless population in Bellingham. I have seen the issue of homelessness ebb and flow during my time in downtown. I can say unequivocally that I have seen that on the steady increase to the point where it's probably at its highest level that I've seen. And Alice talked about that, that it is creating a lot of pressure on the downtown. And as a businessman, business owner and a property owner in downtown, I'm extremely concerned about the reputation that the downtown may be having the core of our community. I live it every day, but those who are outside, so I'm used to dealing with whatever issues the downtown has to offer, both good and bad. But for those who live outside of the downtown, I fear that it has become a really unsafe place, so that is the perception. I won't talk about the low barrier shelter. I think people have talked very eloquently about the need for the low barrier shelter. I think that there's a great deal of unanimity and understanding that what we are facing, that homelessness is on the rise. I don't think it's going to go away at any time soon. I do want to talk from a land use perspective. There is no good place to locate a shelter within a community. There is always going to be impacts, and it always requires a certain amount of understanding on all of the citizenry in order to understand exactly where to put that. If you have a shelter in a residential zone, there are issues of security. If you have a shelter in a commercial zone, there are issues of perception. If the shelter is located too far out of the downtown core, it won't take the pressure off of the downtown because of its remoteness. In my estimation, and when I first looked at this site that was being proposed, it had a lot of attributes because it's located in an industrial zone. Oh my goodness. Okay, so from an industrial zone, it's much easier to mitigate the impacts of a shelter. Be it the fact that we have an industrial zone close to the downtown makes it a convenient location for that. On the other hand, I have good friendships in the Waterfront Craftsman District. The Waterfront Craftsman District is a jewel. It needs to be expanded. I've recently been involved in some planning on the Everett waterfront, and I see what happens when the Waterfront Craftsman District goes away. You just can't bring those back. And we have the fortunate opportunity of creating a very robust, or even more robust waterfront zone on the waterway. It's very easy to see when you drive by or from the development zone on the opposite side of the waterway. I'd love to see that intensified. There is some vacant land currently under lease that I believe could make this even more of a vibrant zone. And I do believe that both of these uses could coexist side by side. But that would take the development and the planning of the C Street corridor in order to be able to do that. Just briefly, I don't see the Bellingham Sash and Door site as an appropriate place. That's a wonderful commercial opportunity. I feel that if we led with a homeless shelter there, it would have a dampening impact on development of Old Town and that site. But I would just say this: if the commission were to vote to exercise its option, I would suggest that perhaps it could be done with a commitment to work with the city to find another location within the industrial zone, because I do feel that that is going to be the best place for it. This is a community problem. It requires a community solution. It would be easy to kick this can down the road and say, it may not be our problem. I know that the commission's not intending to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Tori Broughton. I'm a registered Democrat and a liberal, I would like to mention. I think there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind here today. This isn't an either-or situation. The no barrier housing situation has already been approved by the County Council. That's not what we're discussing. I think what we need to keep in mind is, at this point, the 15 jobs that will be lost, and these are good-paying, living wage jobs that are in Bellingham that are very hard to come by in this community. And I think we need to keep in mind the future growth that can happen down here on the waterfront. I think homelessness is a complex issue, but that's not really what we're discussing today. They're going to get a low barrier shelter. It's just whether or not we need to have it here. Is the loss of 15 jobs and the future growth of the economy down on the waterfront worth risking today? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori.
My name is Matt McCoy. I'm a commercial real estate developer. I'm a chaplain at the Lighthouse Mission, and I'm an evangelical Christian. And I've got a story to tell you that comes with an invitation. A few years ago, I was tuna fishing with some buddies out of Westport, and long hours on the boat, and we started talking about life and faith and politics. And one of my buddies, who's not a Christian, he says, "You know, I probably shouldn't say this, but I really don't like evangelical Christians." And I looked at him and I said, "Other than me, are you friends with any evangelical Christians?" And he thought about it a while and said, "No, you're it." And I said, if all I knew about evangelical Christianity is what I saw on the news, I wouldn't like them either. But you might discover that we're a diverse group of people. There's some fabulous people among us, and there's some of us that are worth getting to know and worth being friends with. And so my invitation to you is that if you aren't friends with a homeless person, that I'd like to invite you to come down to the mission with me. What's happening down at the mission is fantastic. There's amazing things happening down there. Lives are being changed down there. I am down there every Wednesday at 9 a.m. and almost every Thursday night at 7 p.m. And I'd love to have you come down there with me just to become friends with some folks that are homeless. And by friendship, I mean not just giving them something, but learning what we have to receive from the homeless, because friendship is a give and a take. And so I'd like to extend the opportunity to you or to anybody else that's hearing my voice. If you'd like to not just talk about the homeless as some homogenous group out there, but to actually get to know individual people and get to know individual lives, I'd love to have you come with me. Thank you.
My name's Jim Alloway. I wasn't even sure I was going to speak, but it seems to me like this is being framed as an either-or. It's being framed as a false dichotomy where you're either for the shelter or you're against the shelter. And it doesn't seem to me like this is a question about the shelter at all, but it's about the site. And it doesn't seem to me that the site should be used for anything except for water-related activities. The ocean is where it is. The people are there. I think to talk about just the 15 jobs and the 5 businesses is underplaying it. Look at all the boats on the ground down there. There's a lot of people who come and go and have work done there. You can have a haul out there. If that haul out doesn't have access to the people who haul out there, don't have access to the people who provide services from those buildings, there's going to be less activity at that, and you're going to be restricted more to the haul out at the other end of Squalicum Harbor. Sites have, I think it is kind of a land use planning question. The sites have particular attributes, and the attributes for this are unreplaceable. If you make a decision to not use that, to let it go from waterfront uses, it's never going to come back. It's going to be gone for all purposes. If you need a warehouse for air freight, you put it at the airport. You don't put it out in someplace else. If you're trying to keep a waterfront that is more than just a tourist site, then you need to have and serve commercial fishermen and serve boaters, serve recreational boaters, then you need to have places like that. And they're shrinking. So I think it's real clear cut, and I don't think it's about the shelter, whether it's a good idea or not. Probably a great idea, though we've heard some articulate views against it, but great idea maybe, but not there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, my name is Tom Aliotti, lifelong resident, Bellingham, business owner, developer, and recently just bought some property 500 feet approximately from the shelter. And I was basically planning on putting millions of dollars into this property because of my research with the city and the port to redevelop this area, and I thought it was going to be attracting other businesses as well. It is a marine-dependent area. You know, there's successful businesses there that need this space, and I just don't think that my research in low barrier shelters is not, I don't see them being successful. I think that the homeless need attention, but I'm not sure a low barrier shelter is the answer. Nor is this location the answer. And the city originally designated this area for marine trades use, and it's been that way for several years, and they gave you guys an option to buy that, to maintain the cluster of that. And I'm sorry, but I think you guys have a duty to buy it. And it needs to happen. You need to maintain the cluster, and I think that we all need to work together and help the city find a better location for this. And I think all of us that are opposed of this location need to help the city find a solution. And I hope that in the future, this partnership between the city and the port that I researched prior to buying my property continues to grow and develop, because it's very important for for everybody involved. And I think it could put Bellingham back on the map as a successful, attractive place to live and be, and it'll give us tax dollars to help us with the homeless as well. So please do the right thing, exercise your option to buy the property, and I hope that the city doesn't come back and cause any problems, and we all can work together in the future. So good luck.
Tom, thank you for your comment.
So I didn't sign up. Is it okay to speak?
It is.
My name is Michael Lillquist. I'm on the Bellingham City Council, but don't blame mayor or any other councilman for what I have to say. I'm going to not tell you what to think, but I'm going to try to tell you some things to think about. I'm happy to hear that nobody except for Eric is against homeless shelters. We've recognized that they're an economic price to be paid, a public safety price to be paid, and a moral price to be paid if we don't address homelessness. So everyone's on board with that. The question is, as the previous speaker said, where do we put this? And the big downside to this location is that it would displace existing businesses, and we want to strengthen our economy, our marine economy. Well, that's the one thing that is most under your control. That's the one thing that is your job number one. And you're sitting on acres of land and empty space that could be filled with marine businesses. Maybe not these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 businesses, but some businesses. Why not these 2, 3, 4, or 5? Whether the shelter goes in there or not, why aren't you putting in another crane? Why aren't you opening up your warehouse for marine trades? Why aren't you adding new facilities on the empty gravel lots you have? Why aren't you working on jobs? So I'm in favor of jobs in the marine trades, and that's your job. What are you doing on that front? Because if that front is addressed strongly and successfully, then the displacement of 2 businesses doesn't matter nearly as much. If all we have is a toehold on the edge of the beach and we've got to fight to keep that toehold, then something bigger is wrong. So right now we have an undisputed, except for Eric, need for homeless shelters. And we could address that potentially, but the thing standing in our way is that we're fighting over the scraps at our table. I'm saying set the table, do your job as an economic development entity, grow those jobs so fast and so great and maybe this wouldn't seem like the issue it is. And finally, I want to echo what some other people have said, which is that there's no ideal place to locate facilities like this. Under our rules, we don't put them in neighborhoods. That means we put them in commercial industrial areas. There is no location that will not displace some actual or potential business. There will always be a downside. That is the hard reality that we in the city recognize. And it's good for you to realize that too, that if you say no to this, if we have to go elsewhere, that location will have its downsides too. There won't be a perfect location that we're going to find that won't have a downside. So it isn't between this great option and this bad option and a better option. It's between a series of not so ideal options. But I want to go back to the main thing. The one downside here is displacement of marine businesses, and that's the one thing that is in the center of your wheelhouse. So work on that, and maybe the homeless shelter won't seem such a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, is there anyone else that wants to speak?
Hi, I'm Jamie Fody, and I have been down here along the waterfront for about 31 years now, and I have seen an increasing amount of activity from homeless people over the many years. And I do think that we do need a shelter, but I don't think this is the place for it. Displacing viable businesses who are providing good jobs is not the answer. Once those businesses are gone, you aren't going to get them back. These businesses are on the waterfront out of necessity, not just convenience. Placing the homeless shelter here would be out of convenience, not necessity. The homeless shelter can go on a spot of land elsewhere. The waterfront, you can't move the water. The businesses are there because they need access to the water. They also need to be able to have access to other waterfront businesses because not all of us work on our own. We work in collaboration with many other businesses to get our jobs done and to serve people. And so I am saying keep looking at viable alternatives. There has to be another place out there that will serve the purpose better for the shelter, other than putting it down in the middle of our waterfront. And I also agree with the gentleman who spoke earlier that if you put the shelter there, it will draw in more people. With more people comes more problems and more issues that we are already fighting on a daily basis. And if you want to know what kind of problems, all you have to do is go down there and talk to some of these waterfront business owners and see what we are faced with on a day-to-day basis in this neighborhood already. We don't need more problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Hello, my name's Randy Johnson. I'm a small entity at Colony Wharf, renting from them my business space for being able to haul out boats and repair. I'm going to sound like a broken record, just reiterating what others have already said about losing space. I overheard one gentleman say that for you guys to build more space for us, but we don't have that right now. We have the crane where it is, and other people have said the water is where it is. So I encourage you guys to buy this space so that we can keep repairing and maintaining and bringing money into the community. So please purchase, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Hi, Gordy Lavigier, owner of Bellingham Marine Repair for 30 plus years, right across the street. Anyways, and I deal with the homeless every day. Bless their heart. There are two types. There's one that wants to be helped and the one that doesn't even care you're there. All they want to do is take something from you, steal from you. defecate, pee, get naked. I've seen it all, trust me. 30 years, it's my back door. The truth of the matter is that the ones that want to be helped, you offer them a location, exterior somewhere, they will go there. They're trying to improve themselves. But the ones that don't want help, you're not going to help them. Like the father said, the pastor, you're not going to get them over there on their train track. They're going to want to be away. They want to do their stuff that they do. That's how they are. It's so expensive for me as a business owner running a business in this area with this kind of stuff going on, because I'm always paying for customers' damage, like thousands and thousands every year. And people don't see it, but it's there. It's big time there. It's right across the street. And what's going to happen is these guys are going to go over there, okay? And what's going to happen is it's not going to be 5 businesses. The entire area is going to be gone. It's going to be, I said, bless their hearts. We need to help them, but moving them there or just the back and forth whole thing, it's just going to make it that much more of less businesses to people that are making money at this industry to help pay for these people. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if I'm not there, I send money to the mission all the time. And if I'm not there making money, I can't send them the money. You know, it's going to kill the businesses across the way. You know what I'm saying? I deal with it every frickin' day. I come into my shop and there's needles laying around. There's defecation. It's bad. And it ain't the good ones that are in the facilities. It's the ones that don't want to go in the facilities. So it's just, you know, it needs a location, but that's the tough part for you guys to come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak?
My name's Tim, and I'm an addict. And I say that because I speak from experience. I've been recovering for 32 years, and I'm still recovering. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes, but I haven't drank or done any drugs for 32 years. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because that's a minor miracle. And a lot of the people that we're talking about and a lot of the people that we're dealing with are dependent on drugs and alcohol. And I speak from experience. I know what that's all about. I'm not a counselor, but I do know that the type of individuals, most of them that we're dealing with, is drug-dependent, alcoholic individuals who are looking for a fix or looking for their next bottle or looking, and they don't care how they get it. And I'm not proud of it, but I speak from experience because I did a lot of stupid stuff when I was using. I don't do it anymore. So I'm able to run a business and I've been successful. And I just wanted to give it a little different twist because I've been hearing a lot of the same things. So I thought maybe I should share a little bit of from a different angle. And I'm not proud of standing up here and admitting to everybody that, you know, I'm a junkie. But there's a difference between, you know, obviously between an active user and a recovering alcoholic. But I just think it's important to look at the whole picture. If we've got people down there who are, they don't think rationally because they're looking for their next fix. And I'm not saying that all homeless people are junkies. That's not what I'm saying. It probably sounds like that. But most of the people that are homeless have some sort of dependency on some sort of habit that's making them, you know, so they can't afford a house or an apartment or a place to stay, or they're not getting help from their family because their family has already written them off. Anyways, I thought I'd share that.
Thank you, Tim.
My name's Jim Hopp. I'm the general manager of the Hotel Bellwether, and I'm just going to come with a different perspective on the side of tourism. We've been watching and we work very closely with the port. We are a tenant, And this Harcourt development that's coming in is a major investment from a foreign company. And when it's finished, it's going to be quite spectacular. The hotel numbers and our tourism numbers continue to climb. The future for Bellingham is wonderful, and it's about the waterfront and our view, and the experience they get in Bellingham and the kindness of the people here. It's a wonderful experience. One thing we advocate and we're very excited about is the potential of a seawall, that we have one that exists somewhat. It's the bike path that would take us right through this development on Roeder Street, and then through Harcourt's development and into Fairhaven and off to Larrabee Park. For us in the marketing and trying to bring people to Bellingham, that is a unique item to have. I don't know if you've been to Vancouver and done their seawall, but it's a wonderful Vancouver experience. This is my favorite things to do. It takes you through Stanley Park. There, you don't go through any homeless shelters or through, they keep the Hastings streets up the road. I applaud the city for their efforts in finding a homeless shelter. It's a big need in this community, and it's an epidemic across the country. But having our mayor and her team working on a solution is great. But from our perspective at the Hotel Bellwether and our tourists and our guests that are coming in, that's a valuable piece of property and part of the Bellingham experience that's very unique. So,
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please go to the podium.
Been sitting too long. My name is Bill Pulse. I'm a tenant of the port. I've sat for 1 hour and listened to all of the comments that everybody's made. And the one thing that I take away from this meeting is that it's the port's responsibility to make sure that this homeless shelter happens. Nobody has said, well, the city is not even entertaining an alternative spot. They're only looking at the port to give up waterfront property, which they're just not making anymore. And my involvement with the Port of Bellingham is that you need all of the waterfront property that we have. So I just don't think that the responsibility solely lies with this board to make this homeless shelter happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else? One last chance. Okay, we have a little bit of business to take care of, and then we'll be weighing in on the homeless shelter as our first action item.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, if I can just add that we've sent many comments received online, social media, and emails to all three of you. So just know that your comments have been received.
Well over 100. So let's move on to our next item. Briefly, the consent agenda. Diane, if you will, please.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions on the consent agenda?
No. I guess I got this on. Hey, no. Can you hear me okay? I have one on item E, quick one, it's a comment mostly. So there's been some discussion about the district energy and the number of pipes, and I just want to reiterate that I don't obviously know the answer to that. I don't know if 1 pipe or 10 pipes is right, but if we don't future-proof it, then we'll be asking ourselves, it came up earlier, by the way, what were we thinking? So if it's, I know that 5 pipes has been suggested, so I'd just like to remind the commission that if we future-proof this, then it doesn't matter how many pipes we need because they're in the ground ready to go. So let's be careful how we move forward on that so we don't get locked into a system that doesn't have any relevance in the future.
So Commissioner, a quick update on that if I can. The Sustainable Connections Group has put, along with Puget Sound Energy, has put together a trip to Vancouver to look at 3 different systems. One of them is a 5-pipe system, one of them is a 4, and one of them is a 2. We're going to try and differentiate and come back to you and specify exactly what the differences are. The fear is that the 5-pipe system has some proprietary technology that locks you into just one company, and we want to stay open to more than that. But we're going to come back to you with a full report in the next, either at the next commission meeting or the one after that.
Thanks, Rob.
And just to point out, this is on piping design, and we aren't okaying it at this point. Just to point that out. I only had one comment, and that's on item C, where we're giving some money that the FAA had designated for our airport to another airport. People are wondering why we're giving that money away. I did attend the FAA meeting, and they bent over backwards on how happy they were that since we couldn't use that money at this time, that we're giving it to Pullman for their airport in hopes of getting back needed money when we need it.
Go Cougs.
Maybe go Cougs. Did you have a comment other than go Cougs?
So the biggest reason we couldn't use the money, I mean, there's always capital projects we could do at the airport, but they require a 10% match. And then above and beyond that, when you build a facility, it requires ongoing operating expense associated with that facility. Our airport has seen a bit of a decline in passenger volumes, and we just didn't feel we had the need for that capital money or the expense associated with it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, gentlemen? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that passes 3-0. So our next action item, if you could please, Diane.
A commission decision whether to exercise the option to purchase a 54,968 square foot marine trades parcel from the City of Bellingham per Section 5.2 of the October 24, 2012 interlocal agreement for the exchange of property between the port and the City of Bellingham.
Gentlemen, any comments?
I have several. First off, they've fitted me up with a new microphone, so if you folks can't hear me, please speak up and I'll try and make it better. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. To me, today's vote is not whether we have a homeless shelter or not. It's a vote whether we move forward with keeping our marine trades area intact and stay on track with the port's future development plans of these areas. As Commissioner Robbins spoke to, over 100 emails. I kept track. I read every email. I returned a thank you comment to almost all of them except today's, which came in pretty heavy today. Just for people's knowledge, there were 68 votes. There were 68 emails in favor of exercising our option, and there were 38 emails in favor of exercising or taking the city's offer. I've been dealing with homeless people since I can remember. I've been a fisherman down here. My grandfather was here, and these web blockers over here, and my father. And the railroad goes right through there, and in those days we called them bums. They showed up, they came around, you know, they wanted to be fed lunch if they were around, and they'd work. They helped us hang the seine, they'd sweep out the locker, they'd clean up the boat. So homeless people to me are not new, and I've been helping them for a long time. I continued what I had a locker here. If somebody showed up, they wanted to do a day's work or a couple hours work, we fed them lunch. We might take them over to the restaurant with us and they'd eat with us there, or we might go down to the boat and have our lunch there. So I'm not against helping the homeless whatsoever. As one gentleman spoke to, I think we have different varieties of homeless people. We call them all homeless people, but they're really, there's lots of different areas that are categories you could put those people under. They need different types of help. I don't understand from some of the comments how putting a homeless shelter on the other side of the railroad tracks, on the water side of the railroad tracks, is going to solve any problems for the urban development they want to do over in a Sash and Door site in that area. In my mind, and sometimes it's a simple mind, it's pretty black and white for me, if you want to turn that area into something else, you're going to have to move everything that's there out of there. The mission's going to have to move. The support services for the mission are going to have to move, and that might be a good thing to relocate bigger and better maybe somewhere. That's an option for the future. This fallacy that it takes 2 years to get this up and running, this site, whether it's there or somewhere else, is in my mind, is kind of ridiculous. I've done a lot of research online. They call them man camps. They call them other things. They're portable units like we use at our school around and job sites. Some of these units are set up for 15 to 20 people per unit. They're totally portable. They could probably put 300 beds in a portable site of the number of these units. It appears to me for less money than they're going to spend at the site over here. Those portable units could go anywhere. Right now there's container vans sitting behind the Lighthouse Mission in a lot there that could be put elsewhere. Some of these you know, that could be used for a site. There's a lot of options, I feel, that haven't been discussed or put out there. Mrs. Thomas, 2 meetings ago, if you want to go on YouTube and listen to her, there's a lot of other entities out there that are willing to put money up and help things move forward to help this situation in Bellingham here that haven't been looked at. And it was very obvious in Mrs. Thomas' testimony that she wasn't received at the city well with those options. There's a lot of things to be looked at. I've lain awake several nights on the ocean while I was fishing and several nights at home trying to figure out what we can do to help this situation be better than it is. It's been dropped at the Port Commission's feet. None of us thought we would be dealing with this. We thought that the 2012 agreement between the city and the port pretty well stood. That was Marine Trades Area. That's what it's designated to be. There was a issue, I guess, on whether this property and this property were equal value when the properties were traded, and that's how we ended up with that parcel being left. And I believe at that point in time, the commission had other things on their plate. They didn't feel they needed to exercise that option and buy it right then. And up to not too long ago, I think the commission felt the same. There wasn't an urgency to buy that property. Well, now there seems to be an urgency to do something one way or the other. Like I say, I think the property, and I was standing there, and I took an oath to improve our waterfront, improve everything for the people of Whatcom County. And when I took that oath, it was very serious to me. And as I move forward and vote, that's what compels me to vote the way I do, is the oath I took for this office. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McCauley, any comments?
Well, as much as I'd like to have the last word on this, it does belong to our president. I'm going to ask Rob. Rob, could you give me a Google map? So there's no shortage of misunderstanding about the proposal for this project. I'm going to start with this one thing. This is not a Port of Bellingham project. The city's going to do a homeless shelter somewhere in this city. The question that I have to answer as a commissioner is, should the Port of Bellingham buy a piece of property or not? And that's the only question that I need to answer. So I'm going to have Rob show you the area. I'm going to call out some locations so people have a very good understanding of what's done on the waterfront right now. So Rob, if you would, could you detail the property itself that the city owns? Now remember, this is a city-owned property. Port of Bellingham doesn't own it. We're not losing it. We don't even own it. And if there's anything I've learned in the last 8 years, people aren't going to listen to what I say. They're going to hear what they want to hear. So I'm going to go through just facts. And then we'll have a vote, I guess, at some point tonight. But these are just facts. So have you outlined it?
Nope, that's not showing up. Sorry. Got this. I know how to use the system.
All right. So the portion that's rather skinny over West Chestnut, that is a street right-of-way. So the port doesn't own that right-of-way, and the city has not vacated the right-of-way for port use. So we have to keep it open. We can use it for short-term storage and access, but that's all that's allowed there. The other larger portion with the sort of white rectangle is a building that's being rented right now by several businesses. You've heard 3 and 5. I think there are 5 total down there. And that site, not including West Chestnut's the 54,000 square foot site. Now, Rob, if you would highlight where the crane pad is. And then scroll down I would do this, but I don't have access to the screen, so my apologies for having Rob do it for us. Okay, so this is an old photograph, but since this picture was taken, the Port of Bellingham has invested public dollars to the tune of getting upwards of $40 million, I think, at this point when we're wrapping that part up. So just at the bottom of where it says West Maple Street, there's now a location for a crane that the Port of Bellingham has bought. It's leased by the folks at Colony Wharf to provide services of lifting things on and off of barges or out of the water. So right now, the access to that crane for vessels that may be moving over to the city's property is across what is described as Maple Street, down C Street, and then they turn in the gate over there. Or they can go around the other part of the building. I don't know exactly which way they trailer those boats. So, Rob, if you would draw a line around the tissue warehouse
and the property around it. That is the tissue warehouse. Now, if you would show the entire property, which includes the yards around it. Okay, so the tissue warehouse is currently mostly empty. It's got a sign. It's 240,000 square feet for lease right now. My estimate, and my number's close, is about 4 acres of pavement and gravel lot that is underutilized right now. There's some of it being leased on the southeastern end of the large building, and Colony Wharf is leasing that for boat storage. So the access to that end of the building goes up, if you could draw where that access is, Rob?
I'm sorry, which access?
The access behind the tissue warehouse.
Right here.
And there's a, can you show where the road ramps down? There we go. So it's an unfinished road. It was providing access to the facilities down there while there was some construction going on. So, but it's gravel right now and it is usable. Now, Rob, could you zoom out?
Oh, my lines are going to go away, so hold on.
You can lose the lines, that's okay. Okay, so as a commissioner, one of our partners, of which we have several in this county, you notice that the sheriff was here. He's been here one time in the 8 years I've been here, and it was to say thank you. Today it was to say let's work with our partner. The city of Bellingham has presented an issue to the Port of Bellingham and said we need to do something, and you have an option on the property. So one of the facts of the matter is that the only partner that identified itself that was willing to work with the city of Bellingham on their homeless problem was the Lighthouse Mission. Okay, so fantastic. Well, they also said it's got to be close to their facility. And they've said no to, if you would point out the Lignan building, please.
You've got your own Vanna White here. This
I know.
is good.
I'm appreciating Rob. He's paid way too much for this, but he's very skilled as well. All right.
Most fun I've had all week.
So the Lignan building, don't go too far, Jim. The Lignan building is a port-owned property. It was taken over by the port from the Georgia Pacific. It's been empty since the number of years that Georgia Pacific has moved out. This year, the port will be investing about $1.5 million into getting that available for warehouse space, but right now it's just a big empty building. We were told that that building is too far away and too difficult to redevelop and manage by the proponents here, so the city and the Lighthouse. So that one is off the table. And you can erase that one. And that's pretty much it for properties that the port can offer. That was it. So if the city, who again is our partner, and especially when it comes to this redevelopment, a very important partner, the city comes to the port and says, we have a problem and we think we have a solution and you're in the way. That is a very challenging thing for the port commissioners to deal with, because we don't want to get in the way of our partner. We need to help them and they need to help us, and we reach out to them quite often. So if we buy the option on this piece of property, where does the shelter go? There's been suggestions that it go into Old Town. So Rob, if you would draw a rough line around Old Town.
Something like this. I'm not sure the exact.
That's pretty close. I lived right near there for about 14 years. I'm pretty familiar with Old Town. Now, if you draw a line around the property that the city owns on Rotor, can you keep them both up there?
Sure.
Thanks. All right, thank you for that. So here, I've got my commissioner hat on, and folks in the waterfront have said, we need you to buy this property. And I can tell you, the first 6 years that I sat up here, I was alone a lot. I have been supporting and protecting and working my ass off for the people on the working waterfront for the entire 8 years I've been here. So this is a very challenging issue for me personally. So I'm being asked by folks to spend a goodly portion of money that's unbudgeted. We hadn't planned on this. It's about $800,000 all in by the time we're done. To do what? To move the shelter a couple of 100 feet across the road. My problem doesn't go away. If there's a problem with security and homeless people wandering all over, spending $800,000 to move it 200 feet, that doesn't solve my problem. So I raised an issue about security, and my fellow commissioners have heard this, but I want to share it with people. If the shelter goes on the city's property on, let's say, the marine trade side of the street, then I feel pretty strongly that we'll be able to put pressure on the city to provide a pretty good amount of security. We'll have fences, full-time staff, cameras, pretty much, eyes on the property all day long and all night long. If this shelter moves across the town into Old Town, my leverage on the city to push for security goes way down. I can call them when we get complaints from the folks across the street in our marine trades land that there's been crimes, but if the city's got to maintain security around a facility that's not anywhere near port property, all we can do is push back after the fact. So the security problem isn't really being helped by pushing this thing far away, and we're going to, or not that far away, and we're going to spend $800,000 to do it. So what I propose to my fellow commissioners is this. Rob, if you would draw a line around the tissue warehouse again, please, and the properties. $800,000 represents about 12% of all the money that Port takes in taxes every year. Remember, this is an unbudgeted expense. So what could we do with $800,000? Well, I can tell you, I've got a list right here that we agonized over when we put our budget together this past year, $15 million in unfunded capital expenses. $800,000 doesn't solve a $15 million problem, but there's a whole bunch of things on this list that we all wanted that we said no to in this budget and the next budget and the one after that, because we just don't have the money and there are other priorities that have come up. So if I think about what those priorities would be, I'm going to run down a list. Let's see here. In Blaine, we've closed the road. By the way, Jim Jorgensen just left. We renamed a pier after him up in Blaine. The road to Jorgensen's pier has been closed for 3 years now because it's falling into the bay. We don't have the money to fix it. We have failing bulkheads in Blaine. We've had people stand in front of us and say, fix our bulkheads. We don't have the money to fix them. We have failing and rotting buildings in Blaine. We have web lockers that are rotting in Blaine. We have failing and rotting sawtooth piers in Blaine, right now about 1/3 usable with a multi-million-dollar fix that we don't have the money for. The marina's right near here. We have got to rebuild one of them, the inner one. It's probably a $22 million fix and counting. We don't have the money for that. The bulkhead at the end of Hilton Avenue, I was going to take a picture just because it's really cool looking, but it's a rotting steel wall that's very close to falling into Bellingham Bay. We don't have the money for that. We have a wharf over here by CV North that fell into Squalicum Harbor this past year. We are short on funding our shipyard upgrades on the south end of the city. We were short by $653,000 just to fix one pier for the Fairhaven shipyard, and we fought for those guys. Every one of those jobs we fought for, we let them delay paying their rent for several years so that they could afford to stay here. And they're catching up and they're paying their bills, but we were $653,000 short on funding a pier so they could even continue to operate. Right now they're hauling material out to those great big boats and ferries in a pickup truck because they can't drive heavy material across their pier. And we barely scraped together enough money for that one this past year. We have unfinished C Street projects right down there, and those words on the map says West Maple Street. We have not funded the concrete that's supposed to be in front of where the heavy lift portion of that is, so that the crane isn't sitting on gravel, and we still haven't worked out the design or the funding for that pad. We have plenty of underutilized marine trades land all over the waterfront, including 4 acres down behind the plywood plant that is sitting idle because we don't have money to do something else with that. The GP Pier, if you could draw attention to that for me, Rob, I'd appreciate it. And just scroll up. The GP Pier has some structural deficiencies so bad that when we opened it for a couple of years for people to watch the 4th of July fireworks, as it's as close as you can get on land, we then had to close it because it is also failing. And that one isn't failing and creating a problem for us other than we can't just let it fail. because it's an environmental liability that we have to solve, so we can't just ignore that one. We have been short on money for the improvements to our shipping terminal to the tune of $7 million. If you can draw a line around that, Rob, I'd appreciate it. So that pier right there, which is the only pier that's publicly owned in Whatcom County, is being required to have stormwater upgrades to it. We have yet to identify the solution or the funding for that solution, but it is not going to be cheap, and I expect it to be well over $1 million, which we have not yet found the money for. We, as was mentioned a moment ago, gave money to another airport because we didn't have enough money to do our own capital projects and therefore took them off our table. Let's see. I have been waiting for almost 7 years now to replace the cranes on the Sawtooth piers, both in Squalicum Harbor and in Blaine, and they aren't up. So I'm pointing these things out because $800,000 is a lot of money. And the question is this property critical to the outcomes of the marine trades in Whatcom County? Rob, if you zoom in and then draw a picture around Tom's property. Is Tom, you still here? There you are. Tom. So the Port of Bellingham has had an opportunity, at least on 2 occasions, to buy Mr. Aliotti's property right there, and we passed on it because we felt it was overpriced. The uses at the port would have put it to our marine trades, and the lease rates for the marine trades are quite low on purpose, and it didn't really meet the standards that we had. So we could have bought it twice. We didn't. It sat idle for about 2 years. Most recently, it was purchased by Mr. Aliotti, and I hope you're amazingly successful because it's a fantastic location. That piece of property, if you'll notice, has a wharf. It has water access, and I argued about 5 years ago that the water needed to be dredged deeper, and I lost that vote. So it's not super deep, but it does have water access, and it's almost the exact same size as the city's property that we're talking about today. How many phone calls did Mike McCauley get in 2 years that sat empty? Said, you got to buy this. Critical. Water access. 0. Not one person called me. I see a room full of people here with a lot of heartfelt emotion about it, but I got 0 phone calls about that piece of property, and that's got water access. It's not landlocked. It had businesses in it that couldn't get their boats in it. I couldn't get the water deeper. Port didn't support it. Port Commission didn't support it, so they left. But I didn't get a single phone call for the port to buy that property. So I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm hearing what you're saying, but we have some pretty expensive things that we have to spend money on, and I'm asking myself, is this the most important one? I hear what you're saying, Mark. Hang on. Now, about 6 years ago, and every year since until 2 years ago when I finally gave up, would you draw a line around the tissue warehouse one more time? That was rented by Storecraft. They paid the Port of Bellingham about $850,000 a year. Every time I brought it up that we need to kick them out into a private building in the county, so they stayed here in a privately owned building and put this into the marine trades, which it was designated as, I lost the vote every time. Most recently 2 years ago because they paid $850,000 in rent, which is more than marine trades pay. Marine trades moving to there, they're going to pay about half. Well, guess what? Storecraft left. I look at this as an opportunity right now. We have 240,000 square feet of empty space. That's 4 times bigger than this 54,000 square feet of space that the city owns. We have at least 4 acres of upland space. Combined 8 acres, 4 of them under one roof. Secure, dry, 24/7 access. Right now, it's available, it's for rent. But if we put a warehouse in there, which is what we're actually trying to do, put a warehouse use back in there, we lose that from marine trades again until that lease runs out. I was sad to see Storecraft go because that was a big hit to our bottom line. It was the same time the Horizon boat left. We took over $1.5 million down on almost $1.5 million loss in income from those 2 businesses leaving. So that was a big deal. But I see an opportunity here. I am willing to support the commission in funding upgrades to that building and those properties to move not just 3 marine trades businesses, but to find a way to get more marine trades businesses in there because that's a better way for us to spend very scarce, unbudgeted dollars, not on a piece of property that isn't critical to our mission. It's a good piece of property, just like Tom's property. It's a good piece of property. But I got to look at so many other things across this county. And you know one thing that's really disappointing to me right now? In the 8 years I've been here, 8 years, been looking for a project to do out in the east end of the county because the Port of Bellingham is an agency that's supposed to be working on economic development for everybody, not just a handful of businesses on one waterfront. And this is a big county. Most people don't know this. We're about 3 square miles smaller than King County. We're a big county. So what has the Port of Bellingham done for the east end of the county ever? Well, I finally found a project. I thought I had some support. It's going to cost at least $400,000, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to get it into the budget, but it keeps falling off, right? So where I need to be thinking about how do we get more jobs for everybody in this county, right now all I'm hearing is we need to get more jobs for 12 people. Well, wait, they're already employed, and we can move them next week into a better building. So I have to be convinced. Somebody's really going to have to work hard today before we vote to convince me that this is the best way to spend this kind of money. Because we've got a way to improve the job situation in the east end of the county, and I just went down our unfunded list, which is in the tune of more than $15 million. So I'm going to have to be convinced that this is the best way for us to spend our money.
Can I say one thing before you start?
Certainly.
You know, we had some pretty heated discussions over the ITech building being sold over here, and I distinctly remember you saying to me, well, we'll get some other waterfront property with that money that came from the ITech building. And we were looking at the parcel that Mr. Aliotti bought. And I think that was his, Shirley here, what was the dollar amount we got on that?
A little over $1 million.
Yeah, million one or something, yeah.
Okay, we had $1.1 million. That money disappeared into all our other stuff. That would have covered the purchase of this property, and it would have been property that you said we were going to replace. So I have an issue, and I always have an issue with getting rid of property. That tissue warehouse could be leased out to a number of marine trades businesses in the future. You know, how we've ended up with the amount of property we have is we keep getting rid of stuff saying, oh, we'll do something different in the future. So when you say it's a better deal, I don't agree with you.
So, Rob, can you bring attention to the ITech building so folks have an idea of what we're talking about? So the building there at 800 Cornwall was owned by Georgia Pacific, and it came to the Port of Bellingham with some property in the trade. ITech is a local manufacturer of solar panels, I think right now the only one in the state of Washington. So if you buy panels here and want to take advantage of the tax benefits that the state offers, they're the only company you can buy from. They needed expansion space. They came to the Port of Bellingham and said, we're leaving Whatcom County. We want that building. So we worked with them. We sold the building. The properties over there have all been, except for the marine trades or the shipping terminal set-asides, have all been on the port's plan to sell over a period of time to recover some of the port's investments or the county's investments or local and tax investments in cleaning up those properties. So I think if we look back at the history of the conversations about what to do with those properties, it was that they would be sold.
The line I just drew is the properties that we've always envisioned selling, and then everything kind of in this area has always been reserved for the shipping terminal.
But I hear what you're saying. It's hard to give up property. I hear you. Yeah. Throw your bone.
Any other comments at this point? Okay. I think I'm going to take advantage of Anna White. I didn't know we got to. Hans, could you go up to the podium for a minute? I'd like to point something out.
Is he a better drawer than I am?
No, you're a better drawer, but he knows the properties.
You're old news, mister.
If we could pull up the Lighthouse Mission, Rob, and put a little circle around the Lighthouse Mission. Well, you don't need to draw it, Hans. Rob can draw it, but just show him where it is there.
Lighthouse Mission. Right there. Oh, you draw with your fingers.
Okay, put a little circle around the Lighthouse Mission if you could. And Hans, the building right across the street, the reason I ask you up there, can you tell us what that building is used for?
The building across Holly Street from the main mission building is the New Life Center. It's addiction recovery and Christian discipleship program and transitional housing and child care center.
And that's run by the mission as well?
Yes, it is.
Draw a circle around that if you could, and then go up west to build the first building going west.
Northwest?
Yeah, the next one west that you have up by the,
Across that street.
yeah,
Right there.
those two buildings right there. What's the first building?
The first building is our Agape home that houses 50 women and children in there. And then the building next to that is our temporary drop-in center, 24-hour low-barrier shelter.
Okay, you got to give my Lions Club a little kudos here. It's the Frank Haskell Lions Club Eye Clinic.
Yes, we have
that
a
you
Frank Haskell's
turned into it.
eye
So
clinic and several other clinics in that facility.
So there's four shelters right there that the mission already has. I just wanted to point that out. A lot of people don't understand that we do have four buildings there right now. You know, I'd like to thank the city and Mayor Linville, who's hiding in the back there, for bringing the homeless situation to the forefront in this community. It is a serious, serious matter. And I've never, in my 72 years on this earth, have never heard anyone talk about homeless so much in this community. So I applaud you for keeping it in the forefront. No issue has consumed my 3.5 years on this commission more than this homeless shelter. We've had more public comment, more emails, more text messages, and more phone calls than you could believe. There's no question that homeless is a problem in this community, but I don't see, at least from the comments that the people have made to me, that we have a comprehensive long-term plan. Now, I know the city probably thinks we do, but the citizens that called me and wrote me, I would ask them, what is the long-term plan? And none of them could come up with the answer. Is it to house them? Is it to find homes for them? Is it to buy them a home? Is it to get them a job? And so with that in mind, I'm going to go through some of the facts that I received in order to draw the conclusion that I'm going to draw. The goal is to get the homeless out of the camps and away from sleeping in the doorways in our businesses. And I'm just not sure from what Rick Sepler has said, it'll get some of them out of there, but it won't get them all. And so that was a concern to me. It was also stated that we can't have more homeless on Holly Street because we may turn that into an urban village someday. Well, I can remember for 20 years we've been talking about turning that area into an urban village. And I think it'll be longer than that before that happens. We've invested over $100 million in cleaning up our waterfront. So we have spent some money, Commissioner McCauley, no question about it, to clean up our waterfront. And we're about to put the first 2 streets in. The city is going to do that. We're just about ready to open our first building and our first park. And I question if the city will still have a focus on our waterfront area, which for 30 years we will be working on that waterfront area, or are we going to switch and do an urban village, or can we do them both together? The other question that came up is, what are we going to do with the other 400 homeless people? And the way I got to that number was Rick Sepler's number of 719 at the last count on an annual count of homeless in the community. There's 150 in the mission now. This new shelter would be 200. What in the world are we going to do with the other 400 people? And I agree with Commissioner Briscoe, we need a bigger shelter. No question about it. And I like the modules that you're talking about. Old Town has been a recycle center and a homeless area for the past 30 years. The Sash and Door site, to me, does make sense. I realize that would be tough for the urban village to be built, but it could be temporarily, because I think when you already have 4 shelters in the area now, putting another one isn't going to end the homeless, the urban village. They'll probably move it all someday if that does happen. But I'm really concerned about what we do, because this wouldn't happen for another 2 years before this would be built. My big concern is, what do we do now? I think the old hospital up on Chestnut and Elm can be used as temporary shelter right away. And then the next question I had is, why did the port ask for an option, and why did the city ever grant the option to the Port of Bellingham? And the reason that option was granted was because we wanted to make sure it was a marine trades and someone didn't build condos there or some other use of it, because it was that important. So the port asked for the option and was granted the option. And that's really what we're here discussing today. Should we exercise our option to keep it in the marine trades? There isn't anyone that's opposed, well, I guess there was one person that was opposed to the shelter, but I'm all for building a shelter. I'm not sure that this is the last acre in Whatcom County that could ever be used for a shelter. Why would we close a water-dependent businesses in lieu of a homeless shelter on the waterfront? And the other question people kept asking us, why would you ever locate a homeless shelter on waterfront property? Something that hasn't been brought up is I see a danger with some homeless people who are under the influence of drugs or alcohol crossing one of the busiest truck routes, the only truck route in Bellingham, and also crossing 3 railroad tracks and going up to the Mission to get their meals 3 times a day. One tenant made a big impression on me, and that was Tom Aliotti. He just paid $1.7 million. Put yourself in his place. He paid $1.7 million for some property, and he's going to put another $3 million into it. So he had a $4.7 million investment, and he just did it in January, worked through the city, and now he finds out there's going to be a 200-bed, low-barrier homeless shelter right across the street. It could cost up to $1 million to move these businesses, and some might just close and not move. We would lose 40,000 square feet out of the tissue warehouse that could be used for other uses. Plus, we would use 1 valuable acre of marine trades if we were not to exercise this option. So after some extensive study of both sites and all the issues and asking many questions, I'll be voting for the port to exercise its legal option to purchase the coveted marine property.
Dan, can you tell me where you got the $1 million figure?
Well, I talked to our executive director, who talked to, I think, our facilities director, and it depends on, of course, where it's located. Rob, maybe you could address that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many variables at play there. One of the factors that I gave Dan was we're going to spend $1.5 million on the Lignin building just to bring electricity, water, and fix a roof leak. And on a per square foot basis, if you extrapolate that out, you're going to get to pretty close to $1 million to build out the tissue warehouse, if you're going to add bathrooms and power and demise it properly. Now, obviously, you could go do everything a lot less than that and not have bathrooms in there and not put more water and not put more power in, and you could throw up a chain link fence and you could probably do that for $20,000. So the range is pretty broad, but I think to replace the space that these existing businesses have, you're going to be close to $1 million, if not over it.
So Rob, don't respond, because I don't want to debate with you on this. I'd rather debate Dan and Bobby, but This warehouse right here is concrete tilt up. It's, as far as warehouses go, one of the nicest ones in the county. It's got a good roof. It's got offices down in the lower corner to the southwest. Comparing that building's cost to put a tenant in there, by the way, the tenant that just moved out sold baby furniture, so it's in good shape. It's got a good floor. The Lignin building is a raw shell with steel walls. Very old insulation, no water inside, no power inside, no toilets inside. So I don't know if the square foot cost to put the tissue warehouse to work would be relevant to compare to the Lignin building, which is it's a different kind of structure and it had different uses back in the past. So I'm going to dispute the number that was put there, although I would say that the variables are pretty extensive, because demising the building into smaller spaces would cost some money. The port has done that in one building that's leased out at the cruise terminal. I think there are 4 or 5 tenants in there, and those spaces are demised with chain link fences. Don't seem to have a problem existing with each other. So I just want to mention that and be careful with our assumptions about those 2 buildings. I would remind Dan, you mentioned Mr. Aliotti's concerns, and I think everybody's tried to address these concerns. So again, I'm not discussing a homeless shelter. I refuse to discuss a homeless shelter. I want to talk about what's important to the Port of Bellingham, and one of those things is security with people that are wandering around. So if security is an issue for us, then we have to manage it. I don't see how putting it on one side of Roeder Avenue in Old Town versus on the other side of Roeder Avenue in this, I don't see that there's a difference in the security problem for the Port of Bellingham. It's a couple of 100 feet away, and people have legs. So I just had to discount that that's a thing. People have said to me, and I studied this, I got a graduate degree in this stuff. I didn't want to be a planner because this is way more fun. A little lightheartedness there. When you got to tell people to laugh at your jokes, you're in trouble, right? People have mentioned that Roeder Avenue is a barrier. In neighborhoods that folks have gone around the world, they'll see a rough side of the street and a nice side of the street, and Roeder's a pretty wide street. There's a railroad track that also is a barrier. Those things are barriers where there's one neighborhood on one side that's nice and another neighborhood on the other side that's nice, but they're not barriers in industrial areas. And with the industrial uses that the Northwest Recycling has in those city blocks across Roeder, it's essentially an extension of the port's industrial areas, and there's no difference to people that are walking around there. There has been a big pushback on its location because, and folks have asked why this location. I think if you look at across Roeder, that's a harder problem for the city to solve than on the proposal in front of us today. And it doesn't help us. If we have a security problem, people wandering around, Roeder does nothing for us. It's not a barrier.
I fail to see why we're discussing security in the first place. If it's not there, we don't need security.
It's going to be there. That's why I'm going to get back. These are just facts.
If you have
It's
to
going to be
discuss
here.
security, if you have to discuss security, you know there's going to be issues. Okay, so why bring the issues there?
You got 8 people downtown to ask that question of. I'm not trying to solve their problem. I'm trying to solve my problem. My problem is if there's a security issue that people are pointing out over there or over here, 200 feet away, it's the same exact problem. And we're going to spend a lot of money.
And in 2012, when the property exchange went on, I wasn't at the commission at that time, but I assume the commission was comfortable with not exercising the option at that time because they figured they had 20 years to exercise that option because the city of Bellingham said this will be marine trades. And they took those people at their word, whoever was in place at that time. So the option's never been used up until we need to use it at this point because there's a threat to take away that property. Because it was explained by the city specifically, it will be, we consider that the marine trades area.
Well, let me make a proposal to the commission. And what if we spend less money and open up that 8 acres for which are under a building that have been off limits to the marine trades, use some of the city's money to do those things, save ourselves some money, open up what's 54 or 8, okay, you got 1 acre here, you got 8 acres there. We're going to open up, 8 times more space over there. And ask the city to extend the option on that property out so the port can buy it sometime in the future. Cost us less money, we can still buy the property in the future.
There's more involved in what about the people like Tom that just invested there, which is an investment?
That is not my problem to solve.
It is our problem to resolve. It's the waterfront. You keep saying this to me.
Yes.
And I keep trying to figure it out.
Because the city's going to put a
shelter. We have a development going
on
over here at the GP site, and it really runs all the way to the other end where Mount Baker plywood is our problem. Okay? Just because somebody else has got a piece of property mill doesn't make it not our problem. And I think our problem, one of our problems that is our problem, is he has bought property to develop under the understanding that the port, what we were going to do, what our plan is, it's put out there, what the city and Harcourt are going to do over there. People have made plans. Okay? Those plans were made on agreements, some of it made on agreements in 2012. And now we just throw that out the window because?
I'm not throwing anything out. The city's asked us to do this.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm asking you, is that what we do?
That's the
We
city's,
just
that's
ignore
a
what
question for the 8 people
we
downtown.
ignore what we've told the public we're going to do since 2012. We ignore that? That's why this port has had PR problems, is because we do things like that. We ignore. We don't need to ignore anymore. We need just to stand up, do what's right, take the heat for whatever it is, and move on. We've wasted enough time on this already.
So is the commission's reticence to purchase or to allow this to happen because they don't want a homeless shelter near the Oregon waterfront?
Mine is not because I don't want a homeless shelter near the waterfront. I don't want to take 1 acre out of our marine trades. That's very coveted. And I understand there's going to be, if it's on the other side, there'd be 200 more homeless in the area, and the few folks we get now, maybe it would double that we get in the area. That would be a problem.
So my question just to you, Dan, because Bobby hasn't answered it yet. My question to you is, we haven't budgeted this $800,000 we'll have to spend on this property. We will have to put off other projects that, in my mind, have a much higher priority, and in some cases are actually emergencies, and you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it because we're going to get the full rent from that property, which on a $700,775 purchase, we're going to probably get $6,000 to $7,000 a month, $70,000 a year. That pencils. That's a good investment, I think, with the port money.
So, Commissioner Briscoe, your reticence or your desire to purchase this property, is it to make the shelter go away, or because it's a piece of property that we have to have?
I think I stated that clearly when I spoke the first time. It's marine trades area. It was dedicated marine trades area. We don't have property to get away. We need more property than we have. And if you look into the future, in my future vision, the waterfront is going to grow probably more than we have room to put people.
So I'll remind you, nobody called us and beat on our door to buy property that Tom bought.
Excuse me, I didn't hear what you said.
Nobody called and beat down on the door for the commission to buy the property that Tom bought. The property that's on the water, it's the same size.
I beat on the door. Since I came, the first day I came here, I talked about that. I spoke to it extensively over there, and it was one of the things we were possibly going to do with the ITEC money. And it never got developed because other people thought it was too much money to pay for the property, so we didn't purchase it.
Just for the record, I was in favor of buying that property too. If I remember correctly, the price was too high.
So we're losing the audience, and I'm going to lose this vote anyway, but I'm going to throw this last point out there. I am really disappointed in this commission right now because this has risen up in my mind because people don't want a homeless shelter near them, and that's the bottom line. We aren't going to make the shelter go away by buying this property, but we are going to delay any effort to help increase the economic vitality of the east end of the county, which I've been waiting for 6 long years for. Is going to wait again and again and again.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. You
And
have
on
that
top of
opinion,
that-
but I don't have that opinion.
Well, you must have magic money, because on top of that,
No, I don't have magic money, but I asked some questions.
on top of that, this building over here, which we could spend $300, $400, $800, $1 million on to put marine trades businesses in, we will still have to spend that money in the future, which we don't also have. So we can't just move marine trades businesses into that tissue warehouse with, again, magic money, because we don't have it. I'm willing to vote yes now to put an unbudgeted change in our expenses this year to do something with that tissue warehouse that otherwise we haven't talked about at all. It's not on our 5-year plan to do anything with that building. So if we're going to do anything with that building, now is our chance.
Well, that building, the revenue from that building, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was near $1 million a year.
$850.
Yeah, and one of the things about the ITEC building that I think there's some misconceptions on is the port has had that in its cash flow as a sale for probably 3 years. I mean, we don't put speculative revenue in our cash flow, but we knew that one was coming. So long before Commissioner Briscoe took the oath of office, that money was spoken for, because once it enters our cash flow, as you can imagine, when you have that kind of a backlog, it gets sucked up pretty quickly.
I think we've had a robust discussion. Thank you.
I like the magic money thing.
Or I sign up for that. I tell you, I wish we had magic money. There's some serious things we have to spend money on. So.
I certainly, with my vote, want to also work really hard to get a homeless shelter and take care of the homeless in our community in a much sooner than 2 years time period, and really would offer my services to help work in any way I could with the city to make that happen. So hearing no other discussion.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Sure.
I also, as a commissioner, would like to work with the city to find a solution to this problem. I met with the mayor about a month ago, and I said that straight away at that time. I think we can find a better solution than the one And I do want to work side by side with the city to try to find that. I think there's a lot of options out there that have not been looked at yet. And I think together we can make this work.
You always get the last word. Is it going to happen this time?
I made my best pitch to everybody, so please don't think I'm abandoning the marine trades. I'm not at all, but it comes down to money.
We need the motion. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm asking if you want me to read.
Sure, read the motion again if you would like.
A motion to authorize the executive director to exercise the option to purchase a 54,968 square foot marine trades parcel from the city of Bellingham per section 5.2 of the October 24th, 2012 interlocal agreement for the exchange of property between the Port of Bellingham and the city of Bellingham.
Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Let the record show the motion passed 2-1. Okay, well, we missed our 5 o'clock break, obviously, and the next item on the agenda is...
Yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom too.
Okay,
Adjourn
we
for
have
10
nothing
minutes.
else. Good, that's all right.
Let's adjourn for 10 minutes. I go to the bathroom, we'll come back from the.
We'll adjourn for 10 minutes.
Give it my best shot.
the meeting. Evening session has public comment. Is there anyone that wants to make any public comment? Super.
Is there any public?
We'll move right into the new business.
I'm sorry.
Bobby, anything on new? Nothing. Great. And you're signing? Hearing none?
I do have new business, but I'm saving it for next meeting because this one was so
I got, is it here?
vicious.
We didn't mean to do that, Commissioner.
Like my wife says it all the time. I only have one. Rob, a few weeks ago, was asking about any updates on the candle thing. If there's been movement on that, any more conversations?
Which thing, sorry?
The working candle on the biomass-based business park.
So we're going to get together with you all on May, where's day? 31, and we're going to have a budget retreat. At that time, we're going to update you on the position of our cash flow, which is better than when we last updated you, and then we're going to ask you to reprioritize the unfunded list.
Okay.
And that's your opportunity to have that discussion.
Thank you. Damn it, lost another vote. Okay, that's it.
Nothing else? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Peace out.